Jeremy Dorothy Herna, Dail Fuin Conchina Stura in Ganifra, agus Narta Grasta Brona Orin Coni de Worth Con Creha, on the Scarutza to Sofra and Ella Breher, Agus in Illigani Fasta, Agus Gur 3 at the Creek no free 3 Creek Stardin. Direct we beseech dear Lord our actions by the holy inspirations and carry them on by thy grace assistance, that every word and work of ours may always begin from thee, and by thee be happily ended through Christ our Lord. Leaders' questions. Colin Deputy Mihal Martin.
Dus part kan kort bottom a rollat and Mohan Phoenix or son of party and Nolig Fehenix, Vash to Henix, the Boil and Tea, looks Gakenya Ty Government Show, Tommy Greer, fair victory of us, a sort and made the energy our son, so Nolig Fehen to Henix to Hen Tonishton, Marian Tassuligum Gwil to Egg Soul, Leshan Nolog, Agus on Fish of Susbiog of Egg Topped. Could I put it to you, Tonish, to the issue I want to raise this morning, after giving you the season's greetings and hoping that you will have an enjoyable and restful and peaceful Christmas, which I think you probably need, like us all. But I want to raise a very serious issue, and it relates to people with disabilities. And I think it's fair to say that if you look back on 2012, what has emerged is a year that witnessed a significant attack on services for people with disabilities, with cuts across the board, a lot of fear and anxiety developing amongst parents and families with people with special needs and with disabilities. A sustained attack, fear and frustration. And for example, 700 school leavers, no guarantees in terms of getting a place, and many still not satisfactorily resolved. Cuts to special need assistance across the country, a 15% cut to resource teaching hours, a very ruthless review of the domiciliary care allowance, with up to 63% of all applications rejected in the first 6 months of 2012, and 50% of children with autism refused a domiciliary care allowance. And the government being forced last year into a review of cuts that it had announced to disability payments. And of course we had Minister James Riley's debacle in August, where he cut 10 million from personal assistance, and people had to camp out overnight to get that cut reversed. We had the further slash and burn cut of 1 million home help hours, which again affected people with disabilities. And this, of course, followed in this budget by a callous 20% cut in the respite care grant. And we've also noticed on this side of the House terribly tightening of the screw in terms of medical cards, particularly for children with special needs and children with life-challenging conditions, who are now being refused medical cards. And Tánaiste, the picture that when one looks at the whole year is one of targeting, it appears to us, and to the people involved and to the sector, of people with disabilities, a removal of any sense of guarantee or comfort. And what I want to ask you is, in the context of 2013, and acknowledging the difficulty of the finances, that there should be a resolve to protect people with special needs and with disabilities in our society. And I know that Minister Kathleen Lynch, at the time of the announcement of the estimates, was not in a position to guarantee that there would not be any more cutbacks in 2013 for the disability sector. And I think she said that. The Health Service, the HSE service plan is due to be published. And I want to ask you, Tánaiste, can you guarantee us that there will not be cuts to people with disabilities and to people with special needs, and in particular that there will be a guarantee of places for those who leave second-level school in 2013?
Well, dús bhhailm aonú leis an teachta Martin agus is tóca le chuile teachta sa Dáil agus nola chuna brona ar péin a chean chóirla agus a gachbáil gan teach agus chuile a oibríonn anseo I deach lein. I'd like to join with Deputy Martin and first of all wishing you, Ceann Comhairle, a happy Christmas, and all the leaders of the parties here, all the members of the House, the staff of the House, those who work here in the press and in servicing the work of Leinster House, and indeed those who work for us in our political parties and in our own offices. And I have no doubt we've had a pretty, I think, intense period of time since the Dail resumed in early September. And I think everybody has agreed that a period of rest and reflection is due to everybody in the House. Can I say first of all that can I say that there is quite a degree of fear and worry among people with disabilities and among those who care for them and who are close to them. And I think it is a responsibility for all of us to ensure that sense of fear and worry is not added to. And therefore, I think that when we are addressing the issue of the services that are provided for people with disabilities, that we should do so in a reasoned way. And I don't think that any member of the House should seek to exploit any issue in relation to disabilities, and that we should work collectively to address their needs. There is, for example, Deputy Martin raised a number of issues. The total amount in the Department of Health alone, which is budgeted for disabilities, I think about €1.4 billion. You referred to the issue of medical cards. There are currently 42% of the population now on medical cards, in addition to those who are in addition to GP cards. There are, in relation to the places that in education, the 700 that Deputy Martin has referred to who leave the system. They have been, as I understand it, they have been accommodated. There has not been any reduction in the payments, the basic payments which are made for people with disabilities, or indeed for those who care for them. I do agree that I think it should be a priority for all of us that provision is made for people with disabilities. The service plan for the HSE, there is a requirement that the service plan is produced, I think it's within 21 days of the estimates being announced. It's to be with the Minister. That process is being worked upon at the moment, and then there's a period of 21 days within which the service plan has to be agreed, and that will be worked on over the next number of weeks. And I think you can take it, Deputy Martin, that as far as this government is concerned, the provision for people with disabilities and for those who care for them is certainly a priority.
Thank you, Deputy Martin.
Taoiseach, I think the key issue in relation to the service plan is, will it include a cut in resources to service providers? And that's the key issue, because they're in the belief that it may. And they've been very clear that they can take no more. Now, the demographic funding that was provided for school leavers was removed last year in its entirety. And not all of the school leavers were adequately dealt with. And I've had a case which I raised here in the House, albeit a very complex case, of a young child who still is awaiting adequate provision and proper provision by the Department of Health and by the HSE. And the case has reached the Ministers concerned, and I gave it to the Taoiseach as well. And the reason why that child has not been accommodated properly is because the funding has been removed. And I've spoken to the HSE officials about this. They're at the end of their tether. So that's just an example of the inadequacy of how school leavers were dealt with last year. Now, the programme for government states, and it's very clear, that the government will ensure, and I quote, that the quality of life of people with disabilities will be enhanced, and that resources allocated will reach to people who need them, and will facilitate a greater level of participation in employment, training and education. Now, that did not happen in 2012, Taoiseach. The opposite happened in terms of people with disabilities and with special needs, right across the areas that I outlined in my opening contribution. And particularly if you look at the domiciliary care allowance, it is a ruthless review. And many parents of children with autism, for example, cannot understand how they're failing to get the domiciliary care allowance. Half of them are being refused the domiciliary care allowance. And the review, 63% of all overall applications ruled out. So the key question is, in the service plan, can you guarantee that there will not be a cut to the funding that would be provided to the service providers? And can you guarantee the parents of the 700 children who will be leaving second level school in 2013, next September, that they will all have a place, and that the funding will be provided to the service providers to ensure the right kind of place and the appropriate placement for those children and young people?
You acknowledged it.
Well, first of all, the service plan is not completed yet. As I've indicated, there is a process by which the service plan is developed. First part of that is the preparation of the service plan by the HSE and submitted to the Minister. And then there is the period of time which the Minister has to consider the service plan. So in advance of seeing the service plan, I don't think that any of us can speculate about what is going to be in it. But I think what we can do, and what I do agree with, is that the needs of people with disability have to be adequately provided for. And certainly it is the view and the priority of the Minister for Health and Minister Lynch, who has particular responsibility for people with disabilities, that should be done. I think that one of the ways in which that is done is to ensure that there is planning ahead, and that's one of the things that is now being done. It wasn't done in the past. It is possible to plan ahead, to anticipate what the needs will be, what the educational needs will be, what the training needs will be, what the needs will be at different stages as somebody with disability needs to access services. And that's the approach that Minister Lynch is taking, is to ensure that there is a plan, that it is worked on ahead, and that it is not being operated just on a year-to-year basis. And I think by doing that as well, I think that we provide certainty for people with disabilities and for their families, that their needs are going to be addressed.
Thank you. Deputy MacDonald.
Can I too wish everybody who works in the houses of the Oireachtas, ourselves gathered here, people watching at home, and all of our families a very happy Christmas. Nulacunnig Díobse Galéir. Tánaiste, on the 26th of September of this year, Roisin Shortall resigned her junior ministry in health. On the 25th of October, almost a month later, I raised with you concerns in relation to Dr. James Riley's meeting with NAMA, a meeting that had happened on April 20th last, in relation to the primary care centre in Balbriggan. And on that occasion, you defended the Minister. You told me that you couldn't track, that you did not wish to track the diaries of every minister and who they met and when they met and so on, and that you would have no wish to do so. That was your response. Tánaiste, it now emerges from Minister Riley's briefing document prepared for him for that NAMA meeting that I have here. We acquired it through a Freedom of Information request by Deputy Pearse Doherty. But it emerges from that note that the specific site in Balbriggan was in fact discussed at that meeting. The site, as you know, owned by Fine Gael supporter Seamus Murphy. The site to be developed by Fine Gael donor AJ Noonan. And the site indeed used by Dr. James Riley as an election office. Now, the Minister was very well aware that his Fine Gael colleagues were concerned to develop this site as a primary health care centre, and there had been contact between the developer and the HSE to say that this prospect was in jeopardy, that he was making, in the words of the email, one last throw of the dice. That was on the 17th of April. And then on the 20th of April, Dr. Riley meets with NAMA, and the site is discussed. And whilst the specific address is not given, it's very clear where the site is. A developer has identified a site in the town centre which is currently being used as a surface car park. So then, lo and behold, on the night before the priority list of primary care centres is to be announced, this Balbriggan location finds its way onto the list. And this, of course, confers considerable financial advantage on both the owner and the developer. Now, Taoiseach, the document that we have acquired openly contradicts Dr. Riley's claim that he had no hand, act or part in the selection of the Balbriggan site. So I want to ask you now, Taoiseach, that some months on, do you believe Minister Riley's claim of innocence in all of this escapade? And do you still believe that Minister Riley is suitable to continue in office as Minister for Health? Do you still have confidence in him? Do you still give the balance of credibility to Dr. James Riley over and above that of Roisin Shortall, even though so much now has come into the public domain?
Well, first of all, can I say that this is trawling over material that was discussed here a number of times previously. I told the House previously that I discussed this issue with Minister Riley, with the Secretary-General of his department and with the Chief Executive Officer of the HSE, and that they have assured me that there was no political involvement of any kind in relation to any individual site. There was an internal audit carried out of primary care centres. Review of departmental files and other documents was undertaken in early October by the internal audit unit at the request of the Secretary-General. The purpose of the review was to determine if any documentation generated from 2011 to date would connect Minister Riley or any of his advisers or anybody acting on behalf of the Minister to the selection of sites for the proposed primary care centres in Balbriggan and Swords. The scope of the request did not relate to any policy decision to locate a centre in either town. The checks were carried out by the internal audit unit, confirmed that no documentation relevant to the request was found. The report which issued to the Secretary-General on the 9th of October and referred, he said, you requested the internal audit unit to ascertain whether or not any documentation generated from 2011 to date was available within the department that would connect Minister Riley and or his advisers or anybody acting on behalf of the Minister to the selection of sites for the proposed primary care centre in Balbriggan and Swords. The internal audit unit asked primary care unit, the offices of Minister Riley and former Minister of State, in addition to Minister Riley's 3 advisers, to undertake a search with a view to locating any relevant documentation. All parties advised the IAU that no records relevant to the request could be located.
Well, Taoiseach, can I say to you that your monotone response doesn't take from the scandal that this is? I have here in my hand the briefing document prepared for the Minister, used by the Minister at that meeting on April 20th last. And explicitly in this document, black on white, there is a mention of a particular site. And it is 68 to 70 Dublin Street. That is the site in the town centre currently being used as a surface car park. Now, Taoiseach, I am absolutely astonished on 2 fronts. Firstly, that James Riley and that this government would have the brass neck to act in such an improper fashion. But secondly, and maybe more astonishingly, the fact that you will stand by not just this minister, but by this obvious, sharp, corrupt practice. Sharp, corrupt practices that cost you a junior minister. And we said at the time, and let me repeat it,
here now,
as we, let me say this, and I said it at the time. I said it at the time. I said it at the time. The wrong minister resigned. Minister Shortall was punished for doing the right thing. Minister Shortall was punished for standing by proper standards in public office. And you reward another senior minister by turning
Point of order.
Sorry, there's a point of order, would you please?
Point of order, Cancorla.
What is your point of order?
Is it now allowable in the House to make allegations under the cover of privilege that cannot be made outside the House without litigation? Has that become standard practice in the House, and is that going to be practiced in the future? Are standing orders going to be amended to remove privilege from people who use the cover of privilege to make allegations against the character of the people in the House?
Would you please resume your seat? Sorry. Can I just say the chair has ruled? The chair has ruled on many occasions that allegations of a serious nature against an office holder can only be made by way of substantive motion in the House, and not by innuendo or otherwise across the floor of the House. So that is quite clear, and I've made that point quite clear. Now, we're over time, so if you just put your question, please. There's a 1 minute supplementary.
I'm not working on the basis of innuendo or supposition.
No,
I have the briefing note in my hand that came from the department, which states very clearly that a particular site was discussed with NAMA, the same site that the Minister slipped into the list. So my question, Count Corla, to Antónis is simply this. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about this whole scenario that you have deliberately turned your face from?
Thank you.
Thank you, Count Corla.
There is a Sinn Féin tactic at Count Corla, which is to come into the House, wave a piece of paper around, say we have the goods on. Please no. Please don't listen to the answer. So Sinn Féin tactic: come into the House, wave a piece of paper around, say we have the goods on you, and then make all kinds of allegations, including sharp, corrupt practices and so on. You have a neck. You have a neck. Sinn Féin, so much illegal activity. How many bodies are buried on this island because of Sinn Féin? You have a neck. You have a neck. You have a neck, and you come in then with your, you come in here. You come in here. You come in here. You come in here then with your orders from Belfast to make allegations. There is a way. There's a long-established way of, if you want to make an allegation against any member of this House, there's a way in which. Oh no, that's the trick. You see, that's the trick. The Minister for Health has challenged you to say outside of this House what you've just said in here. Say outside of this House and stand over it. Don't be coming in here and abusing the privilege of this House. If you want to put any question that in relation to any meeting that the Minister for Health had to the Minister for Health, I'm sure he will answer it. But this is a clever little trick, you see, that you come in here, wave an allegation about the Minister for Health, and then say to me, well, you answer it, and if you don't answer it, ask your question, make your allegation outside of the House if you want to stand over it. If you want to stand over that allegation, you make it outside of the House. You want to put the questions to the Minister for Health, put the Minister to the Minister, put whatever question you want to the Minister for Health, but don't come in here swinging around political allegations. You're sticking to a new law now.
Thank you. Deputy Boyd Barrett, thank you very much. Deputy Boyd Barrett, thank you.
Thank you, Count Corla. And could I also say a happy Christmas to all of those in the House, all those who work here, and to the public outside. And I would, Tánaiste, I'd like to ask you a sort of Christmassy question. One of the things that I love about Christmas, and I suspect many do, is Christmas trees. And most families in this country will have a Christmas tree in their home. And it's like having a little piece of Ireland's woodlands in your sitting room over Christmas. And when you're surrounded by your family and your friends and your community, it's a time maybe around the Christmas tree when people think about things that are important. And one thing that one might think about being important at this time of the year, as you look at your Christmas tree, are those woodlands themselves. How they are part of our heritage, part of our culture, a vital resource for this state. People might also think, does Michael Noonan think or believe the fairy tale that money grows on Christmas trees? Maybe the money that could pay for our property charges that will be imposed on families who can't pay them next year. Now, money doesn't grow on trees that are in people's front rooms over Christmas. But would you agree with me? Would you agree with me, Taoiseach, that money and jobs do grow on the trees that are on Coillte lands, and that in a situation where our country is being crucified with unemployment, with austerity and with cuts, that it really is a crime against the nation that you are planning to sell our nation's trees to private interests, when in fact those trees could generate thousands of desperately needed jobs and revenue for the state. But as we saw this week, 1,000 more acres sold to private interests, so other people will make the money from the Christmas trees, from the logs, and from the industry and jobs that our forests could create. So could you grant the nation a Christmas wish and don't give away our woodlands and our forests to people who see them only as an opportunity for profit, but make a commitment that we will retain our forests and woodlands for the benefit of the citizens of this state?
Well, I'm glad, first of all, that Deputy Boyd Barrett has learned that money doesn't grow on trees, and secondly, that we can't solve our economic problems with fairy tales. May I offer him another lesson, which is about distinguishing the wood from the trees, or more particularly, the woodlands from the trees. This government is not selling the woodlands, but as Deputy Boyd Barrett says, the trees do have the potential to generate income for the state, and that is why we intend to sell the trees. Otherwise, you don't get money for them. So the decision that the government has made is about selling the harvesting rights of trees. We're not selling the woodlands. We're not selling the forests. But if we want to generate income from the trees which grow in the forest, then we have to sell the trees. And that's why we grow them in the first place. So that's the plan. It's called separating the trees from the wood.
Deputy Boyd Barrett, thank you. Thank you.
Taoiseach, the problem is that it's Michael Noonan, your Minister for Finance, who believes that money grows on trees, because otherwise he wouldn't expect people who are in mortgage distress or in social welfare or whose incomes have been slashed to pay property charges and other cuts to their income. But my point to you, Taoiseach, is while money doesn't grow on the Christmas trees that are in people's front room over Christmas, money does grow on the trees on Coillte lands, and so do jobs. And private interests, and indeed even Coillte itself as it prepares for privatisation, don't actually generate the jobs or revenue for the state. What they do is asset strip our woodlands. They don't generate jobs, they sell them off for a song. if you, for example, compare Switzerland,
Question, Deputy.
a country half the size of Ireland, has 100,000 people employed on its woodlands. We have 11,000. And those numbers will be further reduced when you sell off the trees to private interests who just see them as a cash crop to make a quick buck, but have no interest in maintaining them as woodlands or in developing the woodland industry to create jobs. That's the point. And isn't it interesting?
Thank you. Would you just put your question?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that one of the companies that is in the bidding to buy our forests is a Swiss bank, headed up by Bertie Ahern, its subsidiary.
No, please don't be making allegations here,
They understand the value of our forests because they manage them properly. So why don't you keep them in public ownership to generate the jobs that could put our people back to work instead of selling them off to asset strippers who just want to cash in on our forests and don't want to create jobs or revenue for this state?
Thank you. Could you please respond to that
Very difficult
question?
First of all, Deputy Boyd Barrett, the main reason that anybody would grow a crop normally is to sell it so that you can generate some income from it. And that applies to growing trees the same as it applies to growing corn. Now, you seem to be having some difficulty with understanding this. And since you're on the subject of public money, this state pays you, as it does all of your independent colleagues, a payment for research. And you might use some of that money. I think you're almost 2 years in the House now. You've got about 80,000 euros tax-free to do some research. And you might. I don't see much. I don't see much output for it. You're nearly 2 years here now, Deputy Boyd Barrett, and I don't see a single private member's bill from you anywhere on the order paper. I don't know what you're doing with the 80,000 euros of tax-free money that you've got from the taxpayers.
That's factually incorrect as well.
Can I suggest something?
Factually incorrect as well.
Can I suggest something to you, which might be seasonal? That for the Christmas, you might buy a copy of Little Red Riding Hood, and you'll learn all you need to know there about the economics of woodlands.
That concludes leaders' questions. Sorry. I'd look, if you may, please, thank you. Before moving on to the order of business, could just one sec. Sorry, would you mind, please? No. Sorry, thank you. I would like, thank you. Thank you. I'd appreciate your cooperation now, please. If I may, I would like to wish all members, their families and friends, a very happy Christmas and a prosperous 2013. I extend a similar good wishes to all staff members in whatever capacity you serve, and thank you all for the courtesy extended to all of us during 2012. I also extend good wishes to our friends in the media who sometimes give me a bit of a rough time, but I don't hold any grudges against people, so I also wish to wish all of those working in the media a very happy Christmas and a very prosperous New Year. And I'd like also to thank members for their cooperation during 2012. To those that I may have had a misunderstanding with during the year, if I was in the wrong, I apologise. If I was in the right, I hold no grudge. And I look forward to working with all of you in 2013. Thank you very much. We now move on to the order of business.
Gan Corla, the order of business shall be as follows. Number 13, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann for a decision of the European Parliament and of the Council amending decision number 573 of 2007 EC, decision number 575 2000 EC, and Council decision 2007 435 EC back from committee. Number 14, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the double taxation relief taxes on income and capital gains, Arab Republic of Egypt, Order 2012 back from committee. Number 15, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the double taxation relief taxes on income and capital gains, State of Qatar, Order 2012 back from committee. Number 16, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the double taxation relief taxes on income and on property, Republic of Uzbekistan, Order 2012 back from committee. Number 17, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the double taxation relief taxes on income and capital, Swiss Confederation, Order 2012 back from committee. Number 18, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the exchange of information relating to taxes, San Marino, Order 2012 back from committee. Number 19, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the mutual assistance in tax matters, Order 2012 back from committee. Number 20, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the National Pensions Reserve Fund Act 2000, suspension of exchequer contribution, Order 2012 back from committee. Number 21, motion re proposed approval by Dail Éireann of the report by the Minister for Defence regarding service by the Defence Forces with the United Nations in 2011 back from committee. Number 28, Transport Chorus Umpire Éireann and Subsidiary Companies Borrowings Bill 2012 Shannon, Order for report and final stages. Number 3, Houses of the Oireachtas Commission Amendment Number 2 Bill 2012 Shannon, second and remaining stages. Number 29, Civil Defence Bill 2012 Shannon, Order for report and final stages. Number 4, Civil Registration Amendment Bill 2012 Shannon, second and remaining stages. It is proposed, notwithstanding anything in standing orders, that 1. The Dáil shall sit later than 5:45 p.m. tonight and shall adjourn on the conclusion of oral questions. The sitting shall be suspended for 30 minutes at 12:45 p.m. or in the event of a division is in progress at that time, immediately on the conclusion of that division. Number 2, numbers 13, 14 to 19, 20 and 21 shall be decided without debate, and in the case of numbers 14 to 19 inclusive shall be moved together and decided by one question which shall be put from the chair. Number 3, the report and final stages of number 28 shall be taken today, and the proceedings thereon shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion at 12:45 p.m. today by one question which shall be put from the chair and which shall, in relation to amendments, include only those set down or accepted by the Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport. Number 4, second and remaining stages of number 3 shall be taken today, and the following arrangements shall apply. The proceedings on the second stage shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion at 3:45 p.m. today. Proceedings on the committee and remaining stages shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion at 4:15 p.m. today by one question, which shall be put from the chair and which shall, in relation to amendments, include only those set down or accepted by the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform. Number 5, the report and final stages of number 29 shall be taken today, and the proceedings thereon shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion after 60 minutes today by one question which shall be put from the chair and which shall, in relation to amendments, include only those set down or accepted by the Minister for Justice and Equality. Number 6, second and remaining stages of number 4 shall be taken today, and the following arrangements shall apply. The proceedings on the second stage shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion at 7 p.m. tonight. The opening speeches of a Minister or Minister of State and of the main spokespersons for Fianna Fáil, Sinn Féin and the technical group, who shall be called upon in that order and who may share their time, shall not exceed 20 minutes in each case. The speech of each other member called upon shall not exceed 10 minutes, and such members may share their time. A Minister or Minister of State may be called upon to make a speech in reply, which shall not exceed 5 minutes. The proceedings on the committee and remaining stages shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion at 8 p.m. tonight by one question, which shall be put from the chair and which shall, in relation to amendments, include only those set down or accepted by the Minister for Social Protection. And the order shall resume thereafter with topical issues and oral questions. The Dáil, on its rising today, shall adjourn until 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday, the 16th of January 2013.
Thank you, Taoiseach. There are 7 proposals to be put to the House. Number 1 is the proposal that the Dáil shall sit later than 9:45 tonight and shall adjourn on the conclusion of oral questions. Agreed to? Is that agreed? 2 is the proposal for dealing with item numbers 13 to 21. Motions re proposed approval by Dáil Éireann of a European Parliament decision, double taxation reliefs, exchange of information relating to taxes, mutual assistance in tax matters, National Pension Reserve Fund Act Order and Defence Forces UN report without debate. Agreed to? Agreed. Is the proposal for dealing with item number 28, report and final stages of the transport Chorus Umbrern and subsidiary companies borrowings bill 2012 agreed to? Number 4 is the proposal for dealing with item number 3, second and remaining stages of the Houses of the Oireachtas Commission Amendment number 2 bill 2012 agreed to? Agreed. Number 5 is the proposal for dealing with item number 29, report and final stages of the Civil Defence Bill 2012 agreed to? Is the proposal for dealing with item number 4, second and remaining stages of the Civil Registration Amendment Bill 2012 agreed to? Agreed. And finally is the proposal that the Dáil shall, on its rising today, adjourn until 10:30 on Wednesday, the 16th of January 2013. Agreed. Agreed. On the order of business.
Thank you, Ciarán Comhairle. Could I just say to the Taoiseach and just seek clarification that under Section 221 of the NAMA Act, it is an offence to lobby NAMA, and any attempt to do so is an offence, and the fine, if convicted, of €1,000 or 6 months in jail is dependent. Now, I'm not suggesting that there was any interference or lobbying of NAMA, but I do think the issue that was raised today and following an FOI in relation to a particular meeting between the Minister for Health and NAMA and freedom of information we got
the order of business,
from the Department of Health, which related to how the primary care centres were selected on the eve of the Cabinet meeting and hours before the Cabinet meeting.
Sorry, what's your question, the order of business?
And I'm going to put it now very quickly. Reveal the unsatisfactory fact that the opposition have had to use Freedom of Information Acts for months on end to piece together the jigsaw that is the decision to award or to select these primary care centres. It's very, very unsatisfactory. And I put it to you, Taoiseach, the government has made a commitment to bring in a new Freedom of Information Act. Now, it's taken us months to get a lot of the detail, and some of it is redacted. And I would respectfully put it to you that it's entirely unsatisfactory, the dripping of information in relation to the selection of primary care centres. And I would ask that you would commit the government to undertaking a sharp inquiry into that entire primary care centre debacle, with a view to using all of the documentation that's now available on the Freedom of Information, and to ask the key people involved so that we can get a comprehensive account of how those primary care centres were selected.
On the order of business, I
would ask you to commit to such an inquiry now, because this is distraction to the Dáil. It's been coming up since June at this stage, and there's new bits of information coming out all of the time, Taoiseach.
Thank you.
You must, deep down, behind the scenes, be unhappy with what is happening here. And a number of your ministers have expressed this.
Freedom of Information Bill.
And equally, I'll just say to you, it is unsatisfactory we have to use FOI all of the time. You made a commitment to me some months back that you would publish all the documentation about this, and you didn't. And I had to wait for months to get it from Freedom of Information.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, there's no issue at all about any matter in connection with any minister being debated either in the House or at the appropriate committee. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have committees, is so that they can address issues and question ministers in probably far greater detail than is normally permitted for here at question time. So there is no difficulty with any issue being questioned by members of the opposition. In relation to the Freedom of Information legislation, you will recall that your government filleted the Freedom of Information legislation, and we will have amending legislation before the House in the new year to restore a lot of the powers of the Freedom of Information.
Deputy MacDonald. Sorry. Deputy MacDonald, the order of business. No, sorry, on the order of business.
Well, I too believe that this issue of the
I'm not
handling
going
of
back
the
into that
primary
issue
healthcare centre
again,
is something that
please.
we will have to return to in the new year.
It can be dealt with by way of motion. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure it will be, but I feel just an incredible frustration with you, Taoiseach, that when questions are put to you of fundamental importance around the integrity of processes, decision-making processes, that you resort to hyperbole rather than actually dealing with the issue at hand. And it's a serious issue, and it will not go away. I want to raise two other matters with you, Taoiseach, if I might. The Houses of the Oireachtas Commission legislation is going through today on the last sitting. Count Carl, I had amendments submitted, all of which have been ruled out of order. I think it's very unsatisfactory that this bill comes before us on the last day, and that issues of key public concern around the allowances and payments that members of this House enjoy seem not to be amenable to amendment or change, no matter what we do on the opposition side. So I'd like your response to that. And finally, you have a programme for government commitment to end long-term homelessness and rough sleeping, something that I wholeheartedly support. Many of your actions in government have in fact aggravated the problem of homelessness rather than address it, in particular the cuts to rent supplement. But however, can I ask you, Taoiseach, what concrete actions your government proposes to take to honour this commitment to end long-term homelessness and rough sleeping?
Well, first of all, in relation to the amendment to the Houses of the Oireachtas Commission Bill, that will provide for a reduction of 10% in the amount which is being allocated to the Houses of the Oireachtas for it to do its business. The figure for the previous 3-year period was 360 million. That was for the past 3-year period. That is being reduced to 324 million. It's a reduction of 36 million, which is a 10% reduction on the 3-year period. If you compare it with the 3-year period before that, again, it is a reduction from 393 million to 324 million, or a reduction of 69, almost close to 20%. So it does represent a significant reduction in the amount of money allocated for the running of the Houses. I understand from the Minister for Public Expenditure that many of the individual measures will require the making of statutory instruments, and of course there is a procedure in the House where if any member or any party wants to address particular measures, they may do so by using that. In relation to the issue of homelessness, this government did make it clear at the beginning that one of our priorities was to ensure, as far as at all possible, that people would not lose their home during this recession. And to give a real effect to that, we have passed this week now the personal insolvency legislation, which will radically amend the legislation governing insolvency and put in place a range of non-judicial settlement arrangements for people who are in difficulty with their mortgages, all of which is aimed at ensuring that people will not lose their home. In relation to the issue of homelessness, that is something that is being addressed by Minister of State Jan O'Sullivan, and I'm sure she'll be happy to answer any detailed questions that may be put to her on that.
Thank you. Deputy McGrath.
I want to ask, in relation to the reports in the newspapers this couple of days, in relation to the European fines. We dealt with this issue under the Water Services Amendment Bill. I thought that Minister Hogan, by introducing that legislation and putting charges on people and registration fees, that we had dealt with the situation as against the European Court. We now find we're the worst of all worlds. The Water Service Amendment Bill, and we have enacted a bill, and now it seems that we're going to have to pay the fines as well. So have we any clout in Europe?
Sounds like a parliamentary question.
No, it's a very important issue. I'm You're in good spirit this morning. I know I want to keep it that way, but if I can as well. But it's a very serious matter. No,
I know that.
People have been registering for the tanks. There's now a limited grant scheme, which I welcome.
But it's the order of business. Yeah, I can't help you.
But under the Water Service Enactment Bill, Services Bill, where does it come from? We're supposed to have the fines put away because we enacted the bill, and now we're being fined as well.
We are asked the Tánaiste.
Yeah, well, first of all, the European Court of Justice did impose fines on Ireland in a judgment that was issued yesterday in respect of our non-compliance, the country's non-compliance with matters relating to septic tanks. That was something that went back over a period of 10 years. When the party that you then were a member of and that you supported for a long period of time. These fines relate to the period of time when the party that you supported and the government that you supported was in office and didn't address the problem of the septic tanks. This government has now addressed the issue of septic tanks, which will mean, first of all, that we will not be liable to be fined for the future. But I think the fact that we were fined for the inaction in the past demonstrates the wisdom of this government introducing the legislation in relation to septic tanks, which, of course, you've been going around the country claiming shouldn't be done and can't be done. Now we see, from what happened in the European Court of Justice, what would continue to happen if it wasn't addressed.
Thank you. Deputy Bannon.
Thanks, Orla. Given the level of crime and corruption hitting the headlines on a daily basis, can the Tánaiste tell me when the criminal justice proceeds of crime bill, when will it be published, and can it be extended to empower CAB to include the new crime wave known as the white collar sector?
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you.
Sorry, it's number 98 here on my list. The Criminal Justice Proceeds of Crime Bill, which is intended to strengthen the powers of the Criminal Assets Bureau in relation to forfeiting the proceeds of crime. Consultations with the Criminal Assets Bureau are ongoing at present, and it's not possible to give an indication at this stage as to when the bill will be published.
Thank you. Deputy Durkin.
Can I ask, in relation to two items of legislation, the Courts Bill, which proposes to amend the in-camera rule in respect of family law and child care hearings, what is the present position in relation to it? When is it expected to be brought before the House? Has it been discussed in Cabinet? Have the heads been approved? And similarly, in relation to the Land and Conveyancing Law Reform Amendment Bill, land conveyancing during the boom period that this country experienced over a number of years and now sadly gone, showed up several flaws in the conveyancing procedures. And I would like to know whether that particular bill has been discussed in Cabinet and the heads approved or otherwise, and when it is likely to come before the House in order to ensure that we don't have a repeat of the
The Courts Bill, which is to facilitate the updating of the law to allow reporting subject to certain conditions of family and childcare proceedings. The heads of that bill were approved by Government on the 31st of October this year, and it is hoped to have that bill published next session. The Conveyancing Bill, that's going to take a bit longer, and our hope would be to have it next year.
Deputy Shortall.
I'd just like to ask the Tánaiste about three pieces of promised legislation in the health area. We were promised them this session, and clearly we're not going to get them now at this stage. The first is the HSE Governance Bill, which we were told was a priority piece of legislation, which went through the Seanad in September, but hasn't appeared since. So where is that, and what's the reason for the delay? The second is the Free GP Care Bill, which you had promised we'd have this session. What's the reason for the delay, and when might we see that? And the third is the Public Health Alcohol Bill, which had been promised for before Christmas, and we don't have that yet. So what's the reason for the delay, and when can we expect to see those three pieces of legislation?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Yeah. First of all, the HSE Governance Bill is in the Seanad. I think it's awaiting second stage here in the House. Is my we've been through the Seanad, and it's awaiting second stage here in.
There's no reason for the delay.
I mean, we're breaking for Christmas today, and I expect it to be in shortly in the new year. There are currently four health bills before the Houses. In relation to the health amendment bill, there are some complex issues with this bill that are currently being worked out between the Department and the Parliamentary Council. They're drafting issues, and publication is expected early next session. On the alcohol legislation, work is continuing on that. Progress has been made, and we expect that proposals will be with Government early in 2013.
Deputy Mulhern.
Orla. My question, Tánaiste, says in the context of the forthcoming finance bill, and I just wanted to ask that in relation to the enhanced mortgage interest relief, which has a deadline of the 31st of December next for the first-time buyers to draw down their loan cheques, that a small extension being given to that deadline because of the number of first-time buyers currently who will not be able to draw down their loan cheques on time on account of the holiday arrangements for banks. And I understand in relation to at least one of those banks, there are 400 such borrowers who are going to be discommoded and miss out on the opportunity of availing of the enhanced mortgage interest relief.
Well, that will really be a matter for the bill itself, Corla, and I will draw to the attention of the Minister for Finance the concerns of